Dr. Jacobs is going to be speaking for us today. Rebecca is a conservation technician at the Knox-Lincoln Soil and Water Conservation District. A graduate of UMass Amherst, she's been working with plants since her student years. Rebecca has focused on native and invasive plants as well as horticultural education. Today, she will introduce us to the new certification program for conservation landscapes developed by Knox-Lincoln and Waldo County Soil and Water Districts. Thank you very much, Rebecca.
Okay, we're working, so if I need to speak up, let me know, but hopefully this should be sufficient. So thanks for inviting me. I've spoken to the garden club and general public up here in Belfast in the past, and it's always fun to come back. And I think the last time I was here, I talked about rain gardens, but it's always fun to come and share new programs. And today I'm here representing Knox-Lincoln and Waldo counties with our conservation landscape certification program. So I'm going to go old school, and I'm actually just going to talk to you today and share this program and information, questions. I can just plow right through and we can wait for questions at the end, but I'm also pretty flexible. And if you have a burning question, or if you're like, wait, it's at the spot where I need to know, by all means, just raise your hand and we'll just kind of go with the flow. And it's better to get the information and ask the question while you're still remembering it, then get to the end and go, oh, what did I want to ask her? So I have been with Knox-Lincoln since my daughter was an infant. She drives herself to high school now, so we'll just leave it at that. And in my time there, I've done all kinds of different programs, technical assistance, outreach, education, and one of the most fun and rewarding programs that I have done is this one by far. So this was the seedling, the idea of my colleague Alita McKee, who has retired out of the Waldo County Soil Water Conservation District office. So I always think it's important to give credit where it's due. So she birthed this idea and let it germinate. And we then she and I started doing some collaborations, and she realized that her ecology skill set and my design and horticulture background had this really good fusion, and we were able to kind of from there co-create and develop what is now the Conservation Landscape Certification Program. And it is now in Hancock, Andy Valley, and what other counties? I think those are the ones, and up in Oxford as well. So we have been able to take this program nationally. The National Association of Conservation Districts has had us do a talk on their webinars about it. And we're really excited. NRCS also sees the value in this program and is looking at it, as well as Maine Forest Service, to reach those landowners that may not quite fit specific criteria necessary for their individual programs, but they see it as a bridge to meet some conservation needs that aren't otherwise being met. But it's a work in progress, as all programs are, and so we're always looking for ideas and ways to collaborate and to improve. But this is a perfect fit, we felt, for soil water conservation districts because we're generalists. We are generally sharing and disseminating best practices in agriculture, woodland, residential, commercial, for soil and water conservation. We're not specialists per se. That is the role that we play. And what might be the best practice in a rustic county may not necessarily be the best practice in the mid-coast, for example, or beyond. So we are a consequence of soil water districts. Just for clarification, we are not the Extension Service. Extension services are branches of the universities of said state. So, the Maine Extension Service, they are education and research-based facilities directly attached to universities. Soil water conservation districts are a consequence of the Dust Bowl. So when the winds swept across from the west and blackened the skies in the east in DC, Roosevelt declared that a nation that destroys its soils destroys itself. And consequently, the National Resource Conservation Services was born and funded through the Farm Bill. And then the local branches, these quasi-governmental agencies, which served without the funding, but in some ways like schools, because we don't get those super big tax dollars that but we are these kind of quasi-governmental agencies that work with state, local, and federal partners to disseminate best practices in land and water resources. So the Conservation Landscape Certification Program is really built around this model of generalists and conservation-minded approach. So we look at residential, small land, and agricultural properties, or small mixed use and agricultural properties, using a set of 5 criteria that we think generally both overlap and kind of can be looked at individually and sort of holistically. So the first criteria is to provide wildlife habitat. And in that we have some subcategories. So to provide wildlife habitat, you need food plants. Well, what kind of food plants do you need? So you'll need seeds, you need wild edible berries, you'll need foliage and twigs for making nests and things, right? Food plants and nuts, other fruits, as well as sap. So we have this downloadable, so what you would do is you take this, you would download it. You could use it as a fillable form. You could print it as a PDF and write all over it, which is what I do. And then I go back and fill it in and make it all neat, but that's what works for me. I don't like walking around with a tablet. It just doesn't work for me personally. So, and yeah, and so and we also have had, I think it might be offline temporarily, but we also have an app that you could, the 123 survey. And I think that's temporarily offline, but to be determined as to whether or not there's a strong enough desire to use it. And then you would take that and you would fill in all of the plants that you have on your property that you can identify, and then you can see where some gaps are. You'd be like, geez, I thought like I don't actually have very many, sap-bearing trees or shrubs, or I thought I had berries, but I really only have like bramble. I don't actually have like really good, any sort of fruiting berry plants, etc. Then you look at, do you have any supplemental feeders? Suet, bird feeders, hummingbirds, or butterfly feeders. So we would give you some additional points for those, for supplementing feeding at different times of the year. The next category is that of plants offering pollen and nectar, but we specify each time of the growing season because it's really easy, especially if you're a seasonal person and you have a summer cottage and you're looking at conservation value there, you might focus all your energy in July, August, and maybe September when you're there. But if you're looking from a conservation landscape standpoint, or you're looking from a wildlife habitat standpoint, you need to make sure that you have nesting material and you have spring food and you have fall food, and you need to make sure that they're taken care of in all the seasons, even when you're being the snowbird and landing elsewhere for the time being. So we want to recognize each time of the month. So that's another thing that you would be looking at. And then providing clean water sources for wildlife to drink and bathe. So the obvious would be like a bird bath, right? Or a little water feature, maybe. A next obvious would be like you live on the water, but you don't necessarily have to live on the water. You can live near the water. So my house, for example, is just several hundred yards up, but not on the Naguntuka River. I have a little intermittent stream, so it's sometimes got water in it and sometimes it doesn't have water in it, but that still counts. That's water. So those are sorts of things, but you wouldn't necessarily think of that right away, right? And then do you have those little low, shallow areas on your property providing puddles and, post-rain sources for your butterflies, insects, and other wildlife? And they also happen to be great infiltration spaces instead of having things, little ponding places, instead of having this flow to maybe other parts of your property that you don't want. So the next thing in like the providing shelter for wildlife is a litany of opportunities to say, do I have a wooded area nearby? You can borrow a landscape. It doesn't have to be on your property. It can be adjacent to your property. We don't have to build a woodland per se, but we can borrow a woodland. I always think we have a big backyard, right? So when we look at this practice, or this checklist, we have to think on your parcel, your taxable lot, but you also want to think about sort of the boundaries, because let's face it, the wildlife, the only creatures are the ones that are going to pay attention to those lot lines, right? So do you have, I mean, really, so yeah, the tax assessors and your checkbook, those are the ones that really care where those borders are. The wildlife does not. So, they'll be like, well, I don't have any woodland, but there's 5 acres plus across the street. Okay, well, we can make a little note in the checklist, which I have notes in every section of the checklist, and you say 5-acre woodlot adjacent. So you're recognizing now, because if it went away, that would be a miss, right? Would be a reduction in landscape or conservation value. So, you can borrow it, but it could also theoretically be taken away. So there's that kind of give and take. You have bramble patches. Do you have ground cover other than lawn? There's a lot of different kinds of ground planes that you can deal with. Americans are very attached to their lawns, and that might not be the best conservation value. Rock piles, roosting boxes, so it can be man-made, can be natural. Do you have meadows, maybe a water garden feature? Are you leaving garden plants over the winter months? Are you allowing for those insects to overwinter in those hollow stems? That's all providing shelter for wildlife. Those dead trees or that scruffy area, some places nature's a little messy, or maybe what they think is neat may not be our definition of neat. So sometimes in terms of conservation, we have to look with a different lens. And I think that's really kind of the goal of this, is to help make sure that we are looking with a broader lens than just specific plants around the foundation, or, whatever, or just a horticultural impact. So are we creating or preserving places for wildlife to engage courtship behavior, mating, or places to like fledge or raise their young? So do you have enough mature trees? Or maybe you have a small plot here in Belfast. That has conservation value too. Remember, we are all connected. Each space is connected to the next. It's all part of the big backyard, as it were. So maybe you only have 1 mature tree, but like that would have higher conservation value on your small plot than perhaps, 25 acres of mature trees. Although that would be nice, like we like 25 acres of mature. Do you have nesting boxes, including bee boxes? Maybe you're not one to have a hive, but you could put native bee boxes in. Is there wetlands nearby? Do you host plants? You have to see what kind of plants you have, what's the kind of combination of plants and what you're looking for. Like, I'd really like to lean into the pollinators. I'd like to lean in towards the birds. So you want to make sure that the actual trees and shrubs you have are have the ecological services for those species that you're trying to attract and retain. Dead trees or snags. This one's tough for for clients I've had in the horticultural realm, where they're like, well, they're dead, or they're messy, or like, what do they serve? Actually, from a conservation value, they serve a great purpose, right? They're helping decomposition. They're housing all kinds of little tiny critters, microscopic and visible, and underneath those bark layers. They're creating spaces for your woodpeckers and other things, and food, right? Spaces for them to live and to eat. So sometimes when you need to have trees cut, maybe you top a few of them strategically, and then they become part of the overall visual landscape. And again, a conservation value. You don't have to have it necessarily all removed. You can leave some brush piles there. Usually reduces the cost of the project too, if you're doing some sort of large thing. So it's kind of a win-win, but we're really trying to help you look at your property in a way that's beyond that of what do I have planted for each season for my sort of visual pleasure, right? We're really looking at it from a much bigger perspective. So core criteria 2 is practicing soil and water conservation. Well, we would be remiss if we didn't put that in. That's what our title of our organization is. So kind of have to really touch this. And you're missing the point of conservation if you're not talking about soil, you know, what lies beneath and the water, which we all need, of course. So reducing stormwater runoff. I also say, I'll take a step back before I sort of launch into the different pieces and parts of this criteria. When I introduce this concept or this program to different clubs, landowners, communities, etc., sometimes you have people who are, they're just all in. They're like bird nerds, they're native plant interest, there's, you know, they're all in. But sometimes you got like the couples or like the one kind of, you know, well, it's, you know, but you have then you have that subset where you're like, do you have drainage issues? Is your, you know, is the buffer between your cottage and your lake a mess? And, you know, or is there constant runoff in your driveway? Do you have, you know, and some of these things are kind of not the sexiest part of landscaping or design or horticulture, but they drive people crazy, right? You got that constant bare spot in your lawn, or you've got a constant washout of your driveway. Here's the place where you can kind of hone them into this program and say, actually, there's value here. And then if you did this and this, you plant this little buffer here, it'll slow the water there, you know, so it's kind of it helps to bring people into a program that may not necessarily be into birds or pollinators, but so we want to reduce stormwater runoff for some of the obvious reasons, like protecting shoreline, right? But protecting shoreline doesn't actually just start at the shoreline owners. It starts at the top of the watershed and it goes all the way down, whether it's the freshwater and the freshwater to the ocean and beyond. So no matter where you live in a watershed. So the water that's shedding on your property counts, period. So even if you plant a buffer to slow, infiltrate, and reduce the water runoff on your property, you're aiding in the overall watershed and reducing the amount of, not reducing necessarily the amount of buffer that's needed naturally for said topography and short riparian zone, but it literally all adds up. Because if you're not doing it at the top of the watershed or in the middle of the watershed, can you imagine how much more buffering and mitigation needs to be done right at the shoreline level? So you want to look at ways that capture rainwater from your roof. You want to slow and infiltrate water using terracing, rocks, swales, turnouts, water bars, infiltration trenches, all of these sort of structural elements, but they can be beautiful. You can have a planted swale. You can have a rain garden lush with all kinds of spring, summer, and fall blooming plants, even with winter interest. So there are ways to mitigate and assist and to reduce all that gravel runoff, you know, at the bottom of your driveway by putting a turnout across the road, by creating a little rain garden at the top where the water comes in before it goes across your driveway. So these are the sorts of things that we're trying to help people to like recognize and like integrate into their overall practice. Conserving canopies, shrubs, trees, even meadow areas count when you're dealing with runoff. So I just try to use like my fingers. Picture these as just little meadow plants. If the water's running down, it's hitting plants from the top, right? Even if it's or a tree or it's hitting plants from the top, it's filtering through. It's not all gonna sit. So some of it'll sit on top of the leaves, some of it'll slow down. If it's running off across the surface, it's still hitting even stems, right? And it's moving through these stems and it's getting caught in little nooks and crannies, and some more of it's moving down through the next layer, So all of the plants add up, and people forget, like, also the soil piece. So what's above is below. And you can basically, there's always exceptions to the rule, etc. But basically, if you have grass at my hand height, which would be nice if anybody actually grew their grass still, you have root structure equal below. So if you have a tree, or I'm a shrub, and we turn me upside down into the ground, I would be the root structure for said tree, right? There's some places are, some trees are a little more shallow rooted, some have a tap root, so on and so forth, right? You know, there's always exceptions to the rule and variations on the theme, but the general premise is you have a big tree canopy, you have a lot of surface that water is gonna slow and have to move through, and then, you know, it hit the surface and penetrate. And if it's hitting a subcanopy, it's hitting a shrub layer, it's hitting a grass, you know, or herbaceous layer, and then it's hitting the ground or duff, you know, layer. You've allowed water to sit and hold in many layers, many places, and slow and move in a way that if it was coming directly onto 2 inches of grass or bare surface, is not gonna be able to do, right? It's gonna break, it's gonna move, it's gonna run, it's gonna channel. So these are the things that you're just trying to, again, go through a property and look with a different lens. And this all creates a more aesthetic landscape. So like, even if you're like, conservation is like, you know, again, like there are ways to weave you back in here where you're like, wait, I can make it really beautiful. I can suggest really attractive plants. I can lean in on, you like herbaceous more, I'll give you more herbaceous options. Oh, you like a gravel, you know, we can talk about ways, there's ways to do permeable driveways that have a geotextile and more of a pattern, and there's ways to do it in a crushed stone, simple, cut and dry, basic cost. So like, again, trying to make sure that we're appealing and attracting as much conservation practices in as many ways as possible. So then you go into other water conservation practices. Are you watering your lawn or not? Are you reusing gray water? Do you have rain barrels? Do you just allow the rain to water your plants, or are you supplementing, you know, those sorts of things. So how much are you able to conserve water on your property? And do you have a lake smart or a stream smart principle? That's another part of this practice, or this program, is that we recognize we can absorb and include all the other good programming and outreach that's happening. The Stream Smart program is a great program. This is very similar, but it has its own differences and its own, you know, broad, like, so yes, if you've done the Stream Smart program, we want to know about it. We want to see what's happened. We want to recognize that as the added value, because it is, you know, Lake Smart certification as well. Maine Extension has a pollinator program. We'll talk about that in a second. That's fabulous. We want to know about that. That's add value. We have those links on our programs on the district websites. It's not them or us. It's all of the above. It's how to share all that information and maximize the efforts. Building soil. Are you avoiding tilling as much as possible? There's still kind of just like our love of lawns, we kind of still have a love of tilling. Oh, we gotta till it up. Well, do you really? Like, maybe you don't. Most places you don't. Maybe it's more of a lasagna garden style. Maybe it's a cover and smother. Maybe it's just, you know, create the hole for the plug that you need to put in. It's, you know, we can kind of help guide you with that. And if we, as the more generalists, or depending on who's visiting your property and what special sort of skill set they have, we lean in on each other. I mean, we've had Emma and Sarah from the Andy Valley office contact Alita and I and say, hey, what about this? What about that? We're happy to share our perspectives and our skill sets, and sort of, that's what NRCS is for if it starts to become more specialized. So that's a little bit more about building soil conservation. And of course, and erosion control. So mulch, mulch, mulch. Staff, you talk to anybody from DEP and the John McLean will say mulch, mulch, mulch. That's what he'll tell all of his contractors to leave with, is mulch, mulch, mulch. Whether you're hay mulching, whether you're erosion control mulching, whether you're, you're using the rollout jute mats, but always make sure you're covering. You know, cover those open areas, cover those constructions areas, cover those, you know, those spaces, because that's where you're gonna get the most amount of erosion. Are you creating multi-level buffers for water bodies? Are you practicing main sediment erosion control practices during construction? Do you have more plants on slopes that are not grass? So again, that roots to shoots ratio that I was describing a few minutes ago. Bigger, you know, those meadow plants have much deeper roots than any grass plants. They're gonna hold and infiltrate a lot more water and mitigate any sediments that are coming down a lot better than any grass ever will. So the third criteria of our 5 in this process is to address invasive species. I'll spend a little bit more time talking about terrestrial invasive plants because 1, that is my area of expertise, and 2, that seems to be the thing that most impacts particularly residential landscapes. We have things like hemlock woolly adelgid, not dismissing it. If I see a hemlock, I'm gonna go right over to it, flip it over upside down and look for that gray woolly covering, you know, for the insect, for the adelgid. We are gonna tell you if you have ash trees, we're gonna hand you some information or email it to you later in a report that says, be aware of emerald ash, or is this something that's slowly but surely making its way up from southern New England? We hope not, but you know, these are things, again, to be aware of. And if people inadvertently move wood and they're crossing state lines and all those sorts of things, there's ways to, so we are not dismissing. If you are a huge vegetable and fruit, soft fruit, particularly gardener, you have a lot of berry bushes, I am going to make you aware of spotted lanternfly. God forbid you ever, it's, that's about all I have to say about that. Honestly, the moth looks it's beautiful looking. It's the most disgusting infestation, and it goes so fast, it will blow your mind. So let's not get that in the mid-coast, please. That being said, most of us are putting our attention in on terrestrial plant species, again, because as gardeners, as smaller, you know, residential landowners, or just mitigating something that you can have a little more control over. Like I can't control if emerald ash borer is coming in as much, but I can control the plants that are on the site and whether they stay or whether they go or which ones I focus on. That is kind of within our ability to navigate. You know, we look at finding and assessing what you have, and maybe you don't know, and that's where technical assistance, you know, visit through this program or otherwise would come in, or having another professional come, depending on the level of infestation and the number of species, you may want to have a plan developed. If you have woodland, for example, Maine Forest Service for woodlot owners of 10 acres or more are eligible for a cost share program to get an invasive plant management plan. And then they're able, after that plan is in place, to help to apply for additional assistance for mitigation. So, and these are the things that we want to share with you. These are the programs that you may find yourself eligible for. Those living in Belfast, those living in Camden, Rockport, and part of Rockland, and a teeny bit of Owl's Head, I'm not sure why that got in there, but that is just the way they drew the lines, they could be part of an NRCS program for the urban agriculture. So there may be cost share programs to help do something like invasive species mitigation or wildlife enhancement, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of different ways that you may be able to gain additional services and knowledge through working with this program. So one thing that if you're not familiar with, or you need a little extra helping hand, the Maine Invasives Plant Field Guide is bring it in, it's a field guide. So if they did the right thing, you can drop it in the mud puddle. You can drag it through the invasives patches, etc. And it's this sort of bendy, flexy, plasticized, hopefully without PFAS, and it's done in a way that is very, very friendly. Herbs and grasses are in pink or magenta. Shrubs are in chartreuse, I'm gonna call it. Trees are in brown. Vines are beloved Asiatic bittersweet. Please tell me none of you have those on your garage doors or home front doors right now. I cringe to think. And then some management techniques and principles and practices in the back. So it's a really great field guide for those who are still new and learning, or for those who've learned sort of the top 10 and then realize, oh, I think there's a few more out here I might need to know. So yeah, so it's a great field guide, and it has management techniques, reproduction, range, etc. And so that is a huge piece of the core criteria. That's criteria 3. Are you monitoring? Are you eliminating or managing? Yes.
Sorry, could you just repeat the name of the field guide and
Oh.
who would get it?
Yeah, oops, very good. See, this is why I tell you to do these things. So the Maine Invasive Plant Field Guide, and it's put out by the Maine Natural Areas Program. You can get them, through the Knox-Lincoln Soil Water Conservation District. And I don't know if you can get them through Waldo. Do you have some? Okay. I was like, I'm happy to pitch, but I'm gonna lean into one of the supervisors to see if they have them. And so yeah, contact your local soil water conservation district, because I think most of them have them in stock. So it's something you could pop by the office, or they could mail out to you, and it's a little quicker. I don't remember if okay, so this one I think has plenty in print and available. It even comes with these handy dandy little flippy doodads, so I mean, it's really great. Forest Trees of Maine is another one that has come out, and that's been updated. I have an old version. I also have the newer version. It's like a 3-ring binder. It looks more like this, but Forest Trees of Maine. Those are 2 really, really good guides as you're developing wildlife habitat, plant assemblages, things that we're gonna talk about in a few more minutes, but yeah, so I think it's really important to recognize that there are early detection rapid response species, and there are widespread species when you're talking about invasive terrestrial plants. Early detection rapid response species are kind of what they sound like. They're new to the area, as it were, and they are something that would be a priority plant. You want to rapidly respond to those. So like if I did an assessment and I found pink Himalayan balsam or pink jewelweed, okay, I'm getting, so most of us are familiar with this plant. It's a touch-me-not. It looks like the orange jewelweed, but it's much bigger, more aggressive. It's pink, has a tubular shaped flower. It's fleshy. Are we mostly all in agreement that we know what this is? Okay, which is unfortunate, but fortunate. So that, believe it or not, is an early detection rapid response species here in the state of Maine. It was first identified positively in an owl's head. Sorry, my Knox County claim to fame, no. And it has been spreading through the landscape from there, and so it is in Lincoln, it is in Waldo, maybe southern, or but it's really not, it's just about a 3-county park, with a few outliers, as it were. Yeah.
So are there any programs for roadside control of it? Because that's really how it seems to be spreading, is along all the roads. You drive down 52 and it's everywhere.
So it would be a timing for mowing. So like the blessing and the curse. So mowing time would be critical. They'd want to actually, and it's in contrast to what you want to do for the pollinators.
Yeah.
So the flowering and fruiting time, the seeds would be ready in late July and into August, and they would be, flinging, because they're literally touching, they're propelled by touch, by us, a mammal. It doesn't matter what touches it, but the wind. And, if it's a big enough wind, it can launch the seeds as well. So they would be, the seeds would be dispersing, they'd be ripening and dispersing in the middle of the summer to early fall. That's when our goldenrods and asters and all of the late season, all our meadow plants, and even the seed heads on all our grasses are ripening and getting ready and or just about blooming. And so it's an unfortunate kind of collision. So I think if there's a heavy amount of Himalayan balsam roadside, I think because they're an annual plant, you can get ahead of them. I would be inclined to encourage DOT to mow early and sacrifice some areas in the short term for a long-term gain. But it's something you have to recognize. Like I wanted, again, from a conservation value, there's a profit and loss scenario, right? You're gonna like lose the inland balsam, but you're going to, in the shoot, so it's a profit, like you're gonna gain that loss, but then you're gonna lose the conservation value, the pollinator habitat for a few years in the process. So that's kind of a struggle.
Mowing is a problem though, because it comes back.
It can come back, but yeah. Yeah, no, it can.
You can cut it off and if you don't pull the root, it'll come back.
Yeah.
It's a double step.
No, it definitely can do that, but yeah, hopefully you scalp it or you can treat, yeah, but you'd have to mow it a couple of times, but it's annual and it's fleshy and it's not gonna just keep rooting and keep creating double stems and triple stems and so on and so forth. So yes, but if it doesn't flower, if it doesn't grow back, so I don't care as much about the double stem of it. It's making sure that it doesn't get back to that flowering stage. So it might be a twice mow, but it probably wouldn't be more than a twice mow, in terms of like getting it to flower and then seed and then disperse. And because it's an annual, if you pull them, I mean, it's the most rewarding plant to get rid of. So you can just like walk around and just literally just pull them out and like fling them, it's very, any age, any ability, like it's sort of like you can bring your 2-year-old, you can bring your 82-year-old, like you can just like, this is a plant, we all can do it. But it doesn't, which is not the case with barberry or multiflora or honeysuckle, some of these other plants where you gotta have the hardy bunch, or you gotta be really mad one day and just put a little energy into it, and be like, I'm gonna go out and take care of that. So that's an early detection. So I also say when I give these talks, which is mostly, I've been in other parts of the state, but is mostly in this kind of 3-4 county, area, is, well, it might seem a little daunting on your property or on your street or in your park or neighborhood. I strongly encourage you to put the effort in, because one, it's an annual and it's rewarding. It's like easy to do in the scheme of things. You get a really big patch done in a really small amount of time by comparison, and it recovers. Like I can assure you, I've done acres and acres of this stuff, acres and acres of it. And each time it's amazing. Like the gain is great. And I think we need to recognize that we have a conservation ethic and a responsibility to do our part to, if nothing more, keep it contained. We may not completely eradicate, but if we can keep it contained to a 3-county area out of 16 counties, there's something to be said for that. So I'm sorry that you're all part of the workforce, but welcome to the club. So yeah, and then you have your widespread species. So your widespread species are things like I just mentioned: honeysuckle, barberry, multiflora rose, purple loosestrife. There's kind of the dirty dozen, plus or minus a few, that you regularly see. They're widespread, they're here. They're not going to go away, but we can, again, if you're looking at how to help the conservation value of your property, gaining value overall in the big backyard, reducing the amount of seed spread, reducing the spread of the rise, it all adds up, like it really does. And then there's a multitude of approaches between mechanical, chemical, organic, non-organic, and it's gotta be the right fit for the right place. I do sometimes advocate for the judicious use, generally cut stem treatment, and of a tricloper, glyphosate. If it fits, I feel in certain applications, the gain is better over time. And then in other cases, it's like You just need to get out there with a shovel or a pair of loppers and just get at it, have a little burn pile, do your thing, and you'll be fine, you know, like you'll get ahead of it. You know, it's really, and that's where having a little bit of site-specific help or knowing which ones to prioritize. So then core criteria 4 is to plan and plant for ecosystem support. So now you kind of looked at the wildlife value, you've kind of addressed some of the sediment and erosion control concerns. You acknowledge your invasive species, you've got some approach on management. Looking at plant assemblages, I can guarantee most, not necessarily yours, but most at-large American landscapes have kind of 2 planes. The ground plane, mostly lawn, and the tree canopy, and maybe a few shrubs, right? That's kind of like the American approach to landscaping. So, and for better, for worse, for as well, but from a conservation standpoint, you know, we live in New England, so you have the duff layer. You have the ground plane, like a low vining, hedging, you know, you have the herbaceous layer, you have the shrub layer, you have the understory tree layer, and then you have an overstory tree layer. You got 6. If you got 2, you're missing 4 other opportunities for plant assemblages and layering in your landscape. So, and raking the heck out of the woodland or the edge of your property or your garden bed to get like the mess up is not good conservation value. Those deteriorating leaves, that duff layer of kind of, you know, that is really important. It's building soil, it's retaining soil, it's slowing water, it's adding, it's creating a seed bed. Yeah.
What about 1,000 acorns?
Well, for the sake of, oh no, I would get that. No, I think like 64,000 acorns is walking through the cemetery. I love to walk through the cemetery near my house and
What do you suggest?
I would rake them.
You would.
Yeah, well, or I would rake them in, so if you have an area that's wooded or sort of naturalized or transition zone and you don't mind, then leave them be.
Yeah, right.
But good Lord have mercy, I like the roads and the pathways and stuff like, and driveways and they're like tripping hazards, tripping, slipping, ankle breaking. No, well, I'm an avid walker, runner, hiker, and I'm definitely like, I thought literally about going up Mount Value Trail across from my house and like taking a rake back and forth just to like, and then I thought that might be a stretch, Rebecca, you know? But yeah, so I feel you on the acorn thing, but pick and choose the spots as it were, pick and choose. But that's the truth. So, you know, so the weed is the plant out of place. You know, you gotta pick and choose, how do you use that particular space and place? You know, you wanna be like, okay, 50 million acorns in that place I would like to walk or put my lawn chair out or do the, you know, they're in the way. We'll call those, we can disperse them. Yes. So then you want to just enhance biodiversity through thinking about planting and conservation and those layers. Again, which layers are you missing in the landscape? That is what I would be looking at if I was at your property. I'd be like, oh, you know, she could use a few more shrubs and he could use a few more understory trees and maybe one, but you could actually gain all 6 layers. Again, even on a really small plot, you really just have to think about, it just takes one to kind of give you that assemblage, right? And then last but not least, in terms of core criterias and sort of what we do when we look at this program and ways to think about your own landscape differently is integrated pest management. So whether you use organic practice, whether you use inorganic practice, whether you use companion planting, you're just mechanically, you're hand picking, hand cutting and managing. It's really about the least amount of effort, you know, put in that's like adding to what's happening. You want to make sure you're doing, can you add like some marigolds and some other plants, maybe mint to reduce the number of ants in an area. And ants don't like mint plants, which means it could be monarda. It means it could be, you know, it could be all kinds of, it doesn't have to be peppermint or spearmint. And are you suppressing weeds with cutting and mowing? Are you covering and smothering using different cardboard techniques? You know, maybe your weeds got out of control, you don't want a grass path, you've got a weed path, and you, rather than spraying it with, a Roundup, you just put a bunch of cardboard down, and then the next month you get some wood chips from the, stump dump, and you put those out in the pathway, and like, all of a sudden your problem is solved, but you didn't have to do any major, interventions, as it were. So it's like the least amount of input, for the maximum amount of output. I also always encourage people, if you're looking to improve growth, if you're trying to like mitigate a pest problem that's for vegetables and fruits, or for more ornamental gardens, always look to your soil first. The soil tells the biggest story. It's its own ecosystem, and oftentimes there's some sort of mineral content, there's some kind of, it could be subtle, it could be some, imbalance. Try composting. If you had kind of a meh growth in said garden bed, you do a soil test, they're like $15 to $20. You get a wealth of information. They come back looking like, chemistry tests do, right? Biochemistry, and so if you can't read it, then ask the extension or the soil water conservation, or call the really super happy lab guys these are total plant and soil science geeks, and it's their job to know how to read these, because they're the ones creating them. Call the lab up in Orono and say, it says I need this much. Can you tell me why? Sure. They'll tell, that's what they're there for. So it's great. And all the soil tests can be gotten at the Extension Service and the Soil Water Conservation Service locally, or you can call the UMO lab, which is where they all go. They all go, because people are like, oh, well, I can drop it off with you. Great, but I'm still going to mail it to the lab in Orono. They all go to one place. So pick up the same kits and the same forms, no matter where you are, but they all land back at the same place. We have an optional criteria 6, which is other conservation practices. Are you participating in a dark night program? Not like a program, but practices. Are you intentionally changing out bulbs? Have you taken things, like permanent light fixtures out? Are you doing things to reduce exterior noise? Are you keeping your cats indoors or your dogs on leashes to protect the wildlife? Are you planning and designing or doing adaptations on your property for wind, solar, other conservation practices, other gains? So again, those are they all count. Yeah.
So I have a question about reducing exterior light and noise. I live in the city of Waldo, and there are things that I specifically would like to address I'd love help us to become a depth, but I don't know, started on that project yet, but and I don't know, and noise is another big problem in my neighborhood, of dogs. Are there different services within the groups you're talking about that can help support our claims to say this is, and who would I go to and say, look, this is not good for conservation? Who would support my claim? I don't know what to do about that.
Yeah, so honestly, my work with the Conservation Commission, so I'm on I'm chair of the Camden Conservation Commission, but at the moment, but I'm and I've been working with the Coastal Mid-Coast Conservation Commissions. That's actually a particular niche project that has been taken on. We've been pulling data and research, and there are 2 different movies specific to Maine on dark skies. So, so I would lean in. I'll give you my contact information. There's somebody in Owl's Head that's really spearheaded this and has a lot of data and information. So, I can't say that our soil water districts, that's like it's part of the conservation conversation, but it's not a specifically, we'll send you to more of the specialists or the other groups that are doing the work, as it were.
That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. So this program, I've got checklists printed for everybody. You can find it on the Waldo County Soil Water Conservation website. You can find it on Knox-Lincoln Knox-Lincoln Soil Water Conservation District website, and a couple of others. you can, again, print it out, you can go through it. This is a voluntary program. This is all about being inspiring or certified. If you like to be certified, you want to share it with the community, you think it'll help inspire your neighbors and friends. We have a sign that you can get with whatever soil water district region that you're in. And it's just a nice way, similar to that of the Lake Smart or Stream Smart or other pollinator programs, et cetera, to just kind of share the word. I can say I'm not personally a sign person, but I professionally know and understand that they do work and they have value. I did this, I did a certification on a very prominent property, prominent in like its actual location. And it's unbelievably good conservation value as well, but you can't, it's really hidden behind hedge. But she put her sign out on the streetscape and she sent me this voice. I wonder if I have it on the voicemail, but the gist of this voicemail was, I had a couple from Colorado who were staying in Camden's seek us out, like came, like snuck around or was like, is there somebody back there? You know, kind of thing, you know? And they said, this is like the greatest concept. I love this so much. And engaged with this couple, who's such a perfect couple to talk to about it, because they're just so knowledgeable and educated and such great advocates. And so they said they took pictures of it. They went to our website. They kind of bookmarked our website. And we've already given this program sort of open source, as it were, out to some places in like Kentucky and out in like Iowa, Idaho, somewhere out in one of the I states. I can't remember exactly which one it was, but the point being, like, it's something that, you know, again, it gives you a different lens to look at your property in different ways to add value. And of course, these things all overlap and they all integrate. You get more visual value, you get more birds and other little critters visiting, you get a happier husband because your driveway's not eroding, you get like whatever the fit is, right? Like whatever kind of, so we feel it's a win-win, and it was such a great testament to the fact that we see the value in it and others are seeing the value in it too, that they wanted to bring it back to Colorado and emulate it back there as well. So I'm happy to, so I have tons of information. I should also note that I have like the invasive terrestrial plants that you can't buy anymore, thankfully, but that's how they were disseminated through the landscape. I've got a little bit more on the NRCS Urban Ag program. If you actually live right in Belfast, you may be eligible for some cost share assistance, other programs that, depending on the size and scale of the work that you need done in terms of conservation, might fit. You know, there's a lot more people, a lot more landowners are eligible for NRCS programs than you think. So I think it's really important. I also have something on, again, I'll pull this all out in a bit, on mulch volcanoes and trees and how horrible they are. I don't care if somebody calls themselves a landscaper. If they put mulch volcanoes, if they create a mulch volcano, they should not be hired again. Period. End of story.
What is a mulch volcano?
A mulch volcano. So I'm the tree, and then the mulch comes up. So your mulch should never go up the trunk. So all it does is create epicormic roots, stems, and it just creates like all those multi-trunk, multi-stemmed. So you're collaring it in a place it's not supposed to. You want the tree to, the roots should be in the ground and the stem should be above the ground. If you keep putting the stem below the ground, you know, which covering it up with these mulch volcanoes, you weaken the structure and shorten the lifetime. And we can, this is very well written, Nancy. Good job. We'll just- But it's true. So yeah, so there's a lot of things.
I just have a question about, because in the spring drives me crazy every time I walk by it, but by the Crosby Center, you know, they put in this wall of dirt. They built a stone wall and backfilled it with dirt, and they've got all these beautiful plants in there. But the dirt goes up about 2 feet up, some very mature trees. And the first time I walked by
They should
it,
be fired.
I know, but what drives me crazy is like, how did that happen and why hasn't who's responsible for saying to them, those trees are gonna be dead in. They don't even know that. No, it's right, that right up to the tree trunk, about right up to the trunk.
Yeah.
It's a good 2 to 3 feet up the trunk.
Yeah. So I mean, you can talk to whoever the manager is of the property and just say, I've got some concerns and here are a couple of handouts and just copy and paste and send it to them and just say,
And who did it? Like who?
Landscape.
Landscape architect.
I get a little uptight when people are like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, so you're a landscaper. No, I am not.
I'm not sure if it's a conversation.
Hold up just a little bit so we can get the questions, in case somebody else wants to know the answer. Otherwise, I can stay for a little bit and, answer individual questions too, but.
So is there something going on with the white pines, and if so, what is it, and is it gonna be a problem?
So there is a number of borers and some, other things that are afflicting them, and actually, there's something called conifer crown reduction that you can do to keep the more mature and larger trees, and particularly when you're dealing with coastal. Same thing with, the spruces that are getting, affected. So you can crown reduce and still keep the life of that tree but yeah, every tree has, a myriad of afflictions that it could have. Some of the borers, particularly you've got, some witch's broom and other crowning, and you've got a bunch of other things. Sometimes it's a little more aesthetic and sometimes it's more problematic. So it really, I wouldn't want to guarantee what you're looking at without looking at it or making noise thorough, but there's a lot of ways to preserve trees and to prune trees, to preserve the life of them and to keep that soil retained and the conservation value and the all of the things, the wind protection. So you don't have to always just chop it down, for sure. You can live with some pests and diseases for a lot longer than we often expect. Yeah.
So is the Waldo County Soil and Water Conservation District, are there people there now that we can reach out to?
Yeah,
Drew,
I'm
take it
a-
away.
I'm a supervisor with the Waldo County Soil and Water Conservation District, and, you can see what great work Alita and Rebecca did creating this. And yes, we have people who will come to your house free, it's a free service. They'll come out, they'll do this kind of evaluation, going through, everything Rebecca's presented. So you can, call us or look at our website and get.
That's really.
get
Do you
this
have an
kind of-
office as well?
Yeah, it's out, it's beyond the transfer station, it's on that road. We're housed with the NRCS out there. But I have some cards if you wanna take a card that has our contact.
So I'll just say that at this point in the evolution of this program, the hope was, and to date, we have been able to do it, is that we offer this service, this checklist, for free. There's the whole process. And we, again, to date, have been able to do one hour visit with a follow-up report, which equates to about 6 hours of our time. Let's be real, between driving and the reporting and the visits, for free.
Free to you.
And so like I had one landowner who had 15 acres and she was like, there is no way we're getting through this. She's like, I will pay you. So then it becomes a technical assistance fee for service. Each district, based on a myriad of factors, has a different fee because that's how it works, between how much money you get, other cost share, other sponsors, but there's a myriad of reasons. And then becomes a fee for service. So follow-up visits and or a longer visit than an hour. I actually set my alarm because I figured out I can talk, right? So, and then don't ask me too many questions because then I get to keep talking. So I set my alarm. So we do, a free 1 hour visit. We believe that we've reached a wider range of landowners and we've provided a broader outreach and technical assistance to our constituents, and that the value we gain for them attending additional programs or bringing us in for, you know, technical assistance. Some have hired us to do an invasive plant management plan. Some have hired us to do that, you know, like the gain over time has been valuable. I can't promise that that's how it will continue to go, but I just wanted to like acknowledge that for now. And some people bring you in right away because they're like, I just moved here from California and I don't even know what I'm looking at, you know, like they don't know the plant. They're like, that's a tree and that's a shrub and that's what I know. And, you know, that's fine. So it has more value on the front end. Some do the whole list, they send it in, they ask you questions, they're like, wait, don't worry, I'm not ready for you yet. I had somebody who was like, oh, you can't come here until August. August is the time to look at my property. I'm like, great, I mean, I can look at it anytime, that's fine, I'm sure it's beautiful then too, but he was like, no, you can't come until August, and I don't disagree, it was beautiful, but it didn't have necessarily less conservation value in March, but yeah, so. Okay, 1 and then 2.
So I'm gathering there's no cost sharing associated with this program,
At this point in time,
this
it's
point.
a
but
1
some
hour.
of some of the NRCS
Oh, those are all
programs
cost
have
share.
cost sharing?
They're all cost share.
And do you like have a list of them? I'm asking for me, actually, because I'm trying to decide where to go with a larger management plan. We've got 35 acres for our property and, you know, whether to do like a forest management plan or what kind of,
Yeah,
yeah,
how much woodland do you have?
how much.
Woodland, how much versus open land? We can talk about it after.
Yeah.
Let's
yeah,
try it
talk
out.
later.
Okay, next.
Yeah.
That sounds like a more detailed question. We'll do that privately.
This is a great program, and
Thank
I
you.
wondered about, kind of scaling, and including youth as an educational component.
So, yeah, so our residential, it's a residential / mixed use property. So we could easily take the same exact, so what I'm doing in Rockland, it's fun. I just met with one representative and then I met with, I did a talk at large for the town. And so all kinds of different people came, but sort of people specific to this, the Harbor Trail. So it's a multi-landowner, multi-use, multifaceted, you know, historic, ecological, you know, harbor, you know, it's just this kind of, and really in some ways a kind of ad hoc or sort of subgroup within the community. But it's been in place, the signs are out. I mean, I used to live in Rockland, I'm very attached to, you know, the places and spaces. And so what I'm doing at the end of this month is I'm going out with the group after having met initially with one of the committee members to see if it kind of was viable. And we are going to look at the general is supposed to be large, you know, a big open scale, like the trail overall. And we're going to prioritize, we're going to walk at least a section of it. We may not get through all of it, but a section of it. And we're going to look at the conservation value on all with no one parcel, but as a trail. And then we're going to prioritize places and spaces that could use some work. And we're going to prioritize places and spaces that we can define and acknowledge for their conservation value. And so we can help integrate it. So yes, I'm very keen. I'm no longer doing, again, I'm really only doing this program for Knox-Lincoln County at this point. I've sort of shifted roles. I'd love to be able to continue to do this in a bigger, broader way, statewide and with other counties, and can keep it going and growing and share it with other states. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. It's the same principles and practices. So yeah, I'm excited, but schools would be like high on my personal / professional list to do. I think there's a lot they could get out of it. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll put all this stuff out maybe on the table back here where by Drew and so you've got handouts, take what you want, take what you need. I've got prints. I hopefully have enough printouts of the conservation checklist, but again, you can get it online and it's a fillable form, and reach out to whatever district makes sense. And then if Cassidy has any questions, she can reach out to Alita or I, and we can guide her from there. But thank you so much for your time and your interest. Yeah, I'm gonna do the file.